The glow from a phone screen flickered against the dark walls of a London hotel room. Jamie Dornan lay awake, scrolling mindlessly through social media after another exhausting day on set. The city outside was quiet, but his thoughts weren't. He was halfway between roles, part Hollywood actor, part the small-town boy from Northern Ireland who never quite got used to fame. His thumb paused on a video. A grainy clip, shaky, filmed by a customer inside what looked like a small grocery store somewhere in Belfast. The caption read, "Still working at 81 true dedication." Jamie almost scrolled past it, but then he saw her face, and the air left his lungs. Her silver hair was tied in a tight bun, her smile faint but familiar. He knew that face, every wrinkle, every flicker of kindness in her eyes. It couldn't be, but it was. Margaret O'Neill. For a few seconds, he just stared, frozen. The woman in the video was the same one who had picked him up from school, who made him sandwiches with too much butter, who told him bedtime stories about angels and hope. She wasn't just a nanny, she was the heart of his childhood, and there she was, standing behind a counter at 3 a.m, scanning groceries with trembling hands. Jamie's chest tightened. The soft hum of the city outside seemed to fade. In that moment, all the premier's awards, flashing cameras, they meant nothing. Because how could someone who had given so much still be working so hard so late in life? He turned up the volume. The customer filming was laughing softly, praising her for still working at her age. Margaret smiled politely, her voice gentle. "Oh, I just like keeping busy," she said. But Jamie could see through it. That wasn't just a smile, that was pride hiding exhaustion. He sat up, running a hand through his hair, heart racing. 81, he thought. She's 81. The years started rushing back, the small house in Hollywood, the smell of baking, the laughter echoing through the kitchen. He remembered her walking him to school, in the rain, carrying his bag when he complained. The way she'd tell him, "Jamie, kindness will take you farther than talent ever will." And now, decades later, those words came back to him like a whisper in the dark. He immediately opened his messages and called his sister. "Jess," the clock read 12:47 a.m. She picked up, sleepy. "Jamie, what's wrong?" "Jess," he said, breathless. "Did you know Margaret's still working?" There was a pause. "Margaret O'Neill." "Our Margaret?" "Yes, I just saw a video. She's working at a grocery store." "She looks so," his voice cracked. Jess went silent for a long moment. Then, softly, "No, I didn't." "Oh God, Jamie, I thought she'd retired years ago." "I always meant to check on her." The two sat in silence on the call, both flooded with guilt and memories. Jamie's mind replayed scenes from childhood. Her sitting at the kitchen table, helping him with homework, laughing when he couldn't sit still, the way she hugged him when his mother was in the hospital. He could still remember her. Scent lavender soap and fresh tea. When they hung up, Jamie couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his heart aching. By sunrise, he'd made up his mind. That morning, he left his hotel quietly, no assistant, no publicist, just a jacket, a cap, and determination. The grocery store was small, tucked in a quiet street lined with brick homes and foggy windows. The fluorescent lights flickered as he stepped inside. The smell of coffee and detergent filled the air. And there she was, Margaret O'Neill, a little older, a little smaller, but still standing tall, her back slightly bent, her eyes kind. She was stocking shelves, humming a tune he recognized from years ago, an old Irish lullaby she used to sing when he couldn't sleep. He stood there for a moment, frozen, before finally saying softly, "Mrs. O'Neill." She turned around, confused at first, then gasped. Her hand flew to her chest. "Jamie, my Jamie Dornan." He smiled through tears. "It's me, Mrs. O'Neill." The box she was holding dropped to the floor as she rushed forward, wrapping her frail arms around him. For a few moments, neither said a word. They just held each other, both crying quietly, both overwhelmed by 2 decades of lost time. When she finally pulled back, she laughed through her tears. "Look at you, a big Hollywood star now. I can't believe it. I watch you on telly sometimes, and I tell people, that's my Jamie, but they never believe me." He laughed, voice trembling. "You can tell them again now." They sat in the small staff break room at the back of the store. Margaret poured him tea in a chipped mug, insisting, "You might be famous now, but I still know how you like it. 2 sugars, no milk." Jamie chuckled. You remember everything." "I remember every child I've cared for," she said softly. "But you were special, Jamie. Always kind, always curious. I always knew you'd go far." He looked at her hands, the same hands that once tied his shoelaces and brushed his hair, now covered in wrinkles and faint bruises from years of work. "Why are you still working, Mrs. O'Neill?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. "Oh, love. Life's just expensive. After Patrick passed, the bills didn't stop coming. The pension barely covers the basics, so I come here a few nights a week. Keeps me busy. Keeps me young, I suppose." Jamie shook his head, his throat tight. "You should be resting. You've worked your whole life," she smiled. "Resting is boring. Besides, I've still got my health, thank the Lord." But Jamie could see the fatigue behind her smile, the way her hands trembled, the faint strain in her voice. When he left that morning, he promised he'd visit again soon. But as he walked back to his car, something shifted inside him. He knew visiting wasn't enough. He couldn't just go back to set and pretend he hadn't seen what he'd seen that night. He called his manager and his accountant. By the end of the week, he had a plan. A few days later, Jamie showed up at Margaret's home, a modest 2-bedroom house with faded paint and a garden she still tended herself. She greeted him at the door with cookies, as if he were still that little boy coming home from school. Inside, everything was neat but worn. Faded photographs lined the mantel, old pictures of her and her husband, a few children she'd cared for over the years, and one of Jamie, maybe 10 years old, smiling proudly at a school play. "You kept this?" he asked, surprised. "Of course," she said, laughing. "You were the first one to ever memorize all your lines." Jamie sat down, emotion thick in his throat. "Mrs. O'Neill, I don't want you to work anymore." "Oh, Jamie, don't be silly. I mean it," he said firmly. "You've given your whole life to helping others. It's time someone helped you. Please, let me." At first, she refused. She said she didn't want charity, that she was fine, that she had everything she needed. But Jamie insisted. He told her this wasn't charity. It was gratitude. He wanted to make sure she never had to worry about bills again. Within a month, he set up a foundation in her name, the Margaret O'Neill Trust, dedicated to helping elderly caregivers and nannies across Ireland who couldn't afford to retire. When the news broke, fans flooded social media with praise. Headlines called it Jamie Dornan's most heartfelt role yet. But Jamie stayed quiet. For him, it wasn't about attention. It was about keeping a promise to the woman who had shaped his life. At the first fundraising event, Margaret took the stage, her voice trembling but strong. "I never expected anything like this," she said, glancing at Jamie in the front row. "When I met him, he was just a cheeky wee boy who refused to eat his vegetables. And now look at him, making the world better for people like me." I couldn't be prouder. The crowd gave a standing ovation. But Jamie didn't look at the cameras or the applause. He just looked at her, the woman who'd taught him love, patience, and humility, and felt the weight of gratitude settle deep in his heart. Over the next year, the foundation helped dozens of elderly caregivers retire comfortably. Margaret became its ambassador, traveling with Jamie to speak about the dignity of work and the importance of remembering those who quietly build our lives. One evening, as they drove home from an event, she looked out the window and said softly, "You know, Jamie, the best part of all this isn't the money or the attention. It's knowing I mattered, that what I did made a difference." He smiled. "You mattered more than you'll ever know." She looked at him, her eyes twinkling. "You've made me proud all over again." That night, as Jamie watched her walk up her garden path, he realized something. Success, fame, the red carpets, none of it compared to the feeling of giving back to the people who built your foundation. Weeks later, Margaret retired officially, surrounded by neighbors, family, and a few of Jamie's closest friends. The local paper covered the story, calling it a Hollywood ending in Belfast. But to Jamie, it wasn't an ending at all. It was the completion of a circle. Because some debts aren't financial. They're emotional. They're written in love, in time, in sacrifice. And sometimes, if you're lucky, life gives you the chance to pay them back. Margaret O'Neill passed away peacefully a few years later, surrounded by people who loved her. Her story, and Jamie's act of gratitude, continues through the foundation that bears her name, helping thousands of caregivers across Ireland and beyond find comfort and dignity in their later years. And every time Jamie visits Belfast, he still drives past the old grocery store. The lights flicker the same way they did that night he saw the video. He smiles softly and whispers, "Thank you, Mrs. O'Neill." Because sometimes the biggest heroes aren't the ones on movie screens. They're the ones who loved us quietly when no one was watching.